Hi and welcome. This is Carrie from Steel Roots Market, and today I'm here to demonstrate how I created a little autumn vintage inspired wall decor piece to decorate my home this season. I am featuring the IOD newly released Autumn Cottage mold, and it is a beautiful mold that has such great elements to it, where I thought it would be great to do like a mixed collage type board, all of clay. So with this piece, using the IOD clay, I just simply casted all of my castings, taking my time, doing the process, adding cornstarch into the cavities, and then just taking my time and pressing the clay in, smoothing out the back. If you are new to IOD molds or any of these type of decor molds, there's some tips and tricks, but this mold worked really well for this project. I didn't have to place it in the freezer or any of those types of tricks that we may do to help release castings. So my favorite way to release these molds is to turn the mold over and let the gravity work, pulling the pieces out. This was a larger piece and it did have some areas, so I just quickly removed the little piece and the casting came out perfect. So here you can see I just take a little cornstarch. That's actually quite a bit, but you just dab some cornstarch in there. If you have too much, tap the mold, the excess out, and you're good to go to put your clay in. This entire piece I made using clay. You certainly could use resin if you would like, but I love the look of the way clay will do a natural aged look, giving lots of good dimension for adding waxes or glazes or things like that to give it a vintage inspired look. So for the surface of my project, I am using an oval MDF board that I offer in my shop. I have a variety of surfaces that I try to offer for makers that would like to create with. These work excellent for decoupaging, stamping, transfers, applying all your different paints and different mediums that you like to work with, and then of course molds. So I try to offer some different styles in there, and this one is the just an oval shape, and I love it because you can add your own borders with clay or resin, and it just gives it where you have a nice surface to create with. So as you were watching, I was just kind of taking the images, the castings, and kind of putting them, getting an idea of how I wanted to lay my composition out. And then once I kind of got an idea, I go ahead and start to glue down my pieces. I'm using Titebond Quick and Thick for this. There's a variety of glues that you can use, a variety of glues and adhesives that I use sometimes in my projects. But for this one, I decided to use the Quick and Thick because I was going to be layering, and with it being clay, I do like a nice thick glue when I'm using these decor pieces, creating these decor pieces with clay, because I can go back in sometimes and kind of give it a little filler, or as you may or may not be aware, as your clay dries, it's going to have shrinkage and cracks. So I really try to give some good glue to my pieces. Again, my pieces that I'm creating generally are trying to replicate something that you would see in a very vintage thrift store, maybe something that looks like it's had a lot of love from a long time ago. So just go ahead, glue your pieces on, and you're going to see that I do a lot of layering and repositioning to get the look that I want. I kind of have an idea of how I want to place these, and I just kind of go from there, adding the glue. You only have a short time window frame with this particular type of glue, though, I will tell you if you haven't used it before. So I have it sped up so you can just kind of watch as I glue these castings down. Something else I'd like to mention is that if you notice right there, I had a little tiny piece break off. That's another fantastic reason why I love to use clay. You can just kind of do your little repairs. You could add things on, and I love the way you can layer with using clay. So one other mold I did use was some pieces from last year's Hello Pumpkin mold by IOD. I still have a few in stock if that's one that you would like to add to your collection. But basically there was some leaves and different elements in there that I wanted to add to that. The next thing I decided to do was to custom cut the words Autumn Cottage, which I do have available in my shop. There's two different fonts that I offer in there, and I just basically took those and placed them where I wanted them. You could do this in a variety of ways for if you're doing large decor tags, anything you would like to use for these. They are available, and I just thought it would make it look really, finish it off really nice. So to glue those, a little tip, because they are very tiny, to glue those, I take each letter and I place it over in my little dollop of glue on my workstation and then place them on. Here, I'm trying to decide, if I want to add acorns, which I love acorns, especially this time of year. And there's that acorn mold also by IOD, and those acorns are precious to use into your creative projects for autumn. For now, I'm going to fast forward it, and this is where the project really takes shape. I just go through and just do lots of castings, as you see the wheatgrass and the other embellishments that they offer. You could easily kind of do the larger leaves if you wanted to and break them apart and manipulate those more into your piece. But basically, just start creating castings, and then once you're happy with that, you can glue them down. Make sure you put, a nice amount of glue on there because there will be shrinkage. I always tell when we're working on projects that with the clay, overlapping and really pushing them tightly together helps ensure as the clay dries, you won't have big areas exposed. There are ways to go back in and modify that. You could add little pieces of clay or different things like that. But to help prevent that overlapping, pushing them in tightly, giving some good glue, helps give that appearance of a nice smoother look. So next, after that is all set and I'm happy with my layout, I decided to go in and create a border all the way around the oval. And for this one, I decided on the beaded one. I'm not sure. I have to look at the name of the mold. I do have these in stock, the IOD molds. But I decided on a nice simple beaded look to go around the mold to kind of give it a nice finished frame look. Of course, there's endless possibilities with using molds, especially the trimming piece molds that IOD carries. You could create all kinds of framed pieces with those molds and clay doing this. So I fast forward here just to so you can watch my process. I just go to town and make tons of castings in this design. I still have some pieces off to the side that I want to incorporate into my work. And another reason that this works really great, this little design, is because it's easy to piece together. As you see around the edges there that I need little bits and pieces. It kind of worked well for that look. So now we just go ahead and glue these all down and get them all pushed up nice and tight next to each other. Some of them I even kind of do a little bit of an overlap look because again, as they dry, they're going to shrink and have cracking, things like that. So I don't mind having them real nice and tight right up against each other. I really like how this looks at the end. It just kind of really finishes it off. Okay, so now I have this process done. I go in, make sure everything is pushed down real well around the outer edge, and then go ahead and finish gluing in the little elements that weren't glued in. And then I kind of play around seeing what else I want to add in. That's the best part of when you invest into these IOD molds. You have these tools on hand to mix, match, and do all kinds of creative projects to do your custom pieces for your home, or if you're a maker for your booth, making for gifts, all kinds of fun things. Okay, so now I was ready for my next step, which was to apply a base coat of chalk paint. I'm using a Miss Lillian's brand. It's a brand that I carry in my shop, and it's just a nice gray color. I believe that was graphite, and it gives a nice solid background color. So if you want to do any chipping, distressing, anything like that, it will give a nice background color. Go ahead and apply a nice even coat of chalk paint. I do light coats because depending on what I'm creating, I want to be able to control the color. So I often will do a very nice light coat, let it dry, see where I'm at, and go ahead and continue on coating until I get the color I like. Because as you see here, once I start coating onto the clay, I really love the way this paint just kind of goes into the clay and gives it a nice, almost like stained look, like if you were to let it sit in there and kind of go into the clay. Some of my pieces on this clay is dry and some is not. Some is freshly been casted. So you can tell like how the color shades go into different pieces with that. So here you get to just take your time and go in, make sure all the whole piece is completely covered with this gray shade of chalk paint. And you may need to get like you'll see me later in the video here, get a small little tiny brush to get inside those edges, because again, as this clay dries and it will shrink, you'll have more openings, different little openings that you didn't see prior. So you'll want to get a little brush and get right in there. Another tip I do sometimes is I will spritz a little spritz of water to kind of let that paint glide down into the areas. That's another tip you can do also to get that coverage in there, because my goal is to get this whole thing completely covered with the gray chalk paint here. This is definitely a nice, slow crafting process if you enjoy taking your time, letting the creative process go. When I started, I had no idea what. I just kind of knew I wanted to use this new mold, and I knew I wanted a little decor piece that had the word autumn in it and the word cottage in it, and I knew I wanted to be like a vintage looking piece. So here it is with my coats of paint. As you can see, as it dried, there's some of the MDF kind of is exposed. That will happen sometimes, but that's where you can go in and cover it again if you want, or move on to the next step, which I am doing here. So I am going to apply this, it's called Chippy Effect, and it's by Maja Memories. It's a product I do carry. It is on pre-order. So if you go to my website and see that it's not in stock, when you order it, it's for a pre-order, because this is coming from overseas. From where I get it, it's actually coming from Denmark. And so it's not something I carry a lot of inventory on. So it's a pre-order, and then once I get a bulk order, I order them and ship them out to you. But you could use a variety of products. Sometimes I use Miss Lillian's crackle finish. I carry Pentart, crackles, different things. There's tons, you could do the glue method. There are tons of options to do this. I just particularly love this one. But I use several different varieties. One thing that I love is having a variety of options and products. I do not stick to just one brand for anything. So that is just something about me with my crafting. So what I'm doing here is letting it dry, because basically it's going to do the resist effect. It's just, I like the way this chippy effect kind of gives it. It works fantastic with milk paint. Usually I use it with milk paint, but it does work with this chalk paint as well. Okay, so now we're ready for the next step. And the next step is to apply your top coat choice of color, which I'm using an antique white chalk paint again. Making sure that you cover the entire area. This is where you're going to just take your time, put some music on, and just relax and paint all the crevices of this clay. You will definitely need to get, you'll see later as I'm painting, I had to get another little tiny brush to get right inside the areas to get my full coverage. But I'm loving the way this looks. You're going to have the option of wet distressing after, letting it, and also too, another thing I want to mention as I'm painting this, you can see how the first light coat gives a really nice soft frosted look. If that's what you like, you can stop, or you can continue to add your coats of paint. You give it a nice cream colored background, and then what I do is I come back in and I do a wet distress to lift some areas up on this. So once you get this all completely coated and it's completely dried, I waited a little bit. I think I waited overnight for this particular step. I come in with a baby wipe, lightly damp cloth, and I just start picking areas to distress. Again, take your time and distress this. You don't have to let this completely dry like I do. For those that may know me personally or know of my business, this is I do this after hours of my day job, or in between on weekends, or different things of when I'm not working in the shop, the creative shop. So sometimes my pieces get a little bit drier than what I want, or I have to set things aside longer than I want. So I kind of have learned different ways of achieving the looks that I want than being able to just sit and complete a project. So I just kind of come in here, and some areas I have to use a little bit more pressure. Some areas come off a little bit better depending on where I had applied that chippy paint. As you can see on the pumpkin, it worked really well. You'll start to see different areas. Sometimes you have to just come in with one of those little finger sanding tools or something to get that paint off. It all depends on how your time frame is. But just sit and take your time, and you can always kind of push more paint off than what, as you can see there, I'm kind of just using my finger and really rubbing in those areas to get that off. Another thing that I love working with the MDF, I like how it gives you a good surface to be able to replicate those things. Not all the time when you're thrifting or looking for pieces to flip or upcycle, you might not always find the exact piece. You may have this fantastic mold that you want to use in a creative way, and you just need a nice surface. So that's another reason why I try to offer a variety of surfaces. So next I come in with some of my vintage spray. I love this. This is another Maja Memory product. Again, lots of options. You don't have to use this particular one. If it's something you're interested, it's a pre-order. But, if you don't have this at home, you can come in with glazes or waxes or any of those things. But I really love how I was able to just spritz that on there and let that go down into the crevices of the clay and give it a nice antique look, for finishing it off. This is going to be by your preference, how far you want to go, how how dark you want to go. I tend to do a lot of gold embellished looks, different golds and brasses, especially, with the fall autumn season. That's the trend that I like to use for my cottage decorating. So there's all kinds of fun varieties, and that is the best part of crafting with these clay and making these pieces. You get to sit, take your time, and work with it. This product, you can spritz it on, let it sit, wipe it back, add more. There's a lot of play with it, and I just really love the way it gives a nice finished look. So I just sit here for a while and kind of work at it. Sometimes you have to stop and walk away. I struggle with that, knowing when to stop or when to keep adding. But you can always continue and work. Best advice is that I need to remind myself is to stop and walk away. And you might not come back to it for a couple days. You might need to sit it up and see how it's looking in the particular spot. And I did have to do that with this piece because where I loved the look around the castings, the clusters being all that nice dark, I wasn't crazy about the top around the letters. It just felt a little too dark to me. So I'm just kind of showing you, I love how the shading went in around that. What I needed to work on was the top. But see how I kind of can go in with a wet wipe and kind of blend around. You'll be able to get different sponges and different applicators to give you texture and different things too, which kind of make a nice effect. But basically here, I'm just working it in. I decide to give it some more spritzes in there to let it sit and then go away. If you do this at home and you're just not happy, the worst case scenario, give it a coat of paint over the top and start over. You're not going to, these are your creative projects, your process, and the part of enjoying that nice crafting experience makes it fantastic. Just fills me up. I'd love for you, while you're watching, to, if you could, take a moment to just like this video, share it if you would love to help me out with that. I'm so close to meeting my goal on YouTube here. YouTube has been a learning experience for me for sure. I'm still learning lots of things. I'm learning as I go right now as I'm creating this video. But I would appreciate it so much if you would take that time. And then if you would like to join my newsletter, I do offer a newsletter where I try to offer my customers any special kits or limited editions if I've added a new product to the shop, and give special notices or when I'm having offers. So I try to send those out with that. So you can join that by heading over to my website, which is, link is in the description, and you can join my newsletter by that. But again, if you could just like or give me a follow, I would appreciate that so much as I'm learning and growing my YouTube channel. So here I'm just kind of showing you how it looks without, and then how you can rub it up and around. One thing I want to make sure to remind you, and I might have done this off video, to go around your edges to make your pieces look nice and finished. I often, with these laser cutouts, you'll have a nice black edge, but since you've done painting and techniques and different mediums on there, take a black paint, go all the way around, or take your white chippy look and go all the way to the edge with that. So if you decide to hang this on the wall, or if you decide to prop it up in a plate stand or something like that, it'll look completed. You may be making these to sell in a booth or an event or online. and for your custom art, and just to kind of finish them off. Another thing too is I will be adding, as I get going here, I have a bunch of little hangers that will be out of MDF also, that you can glue on to your pieces to let them be hung. I also will be adding some easels too for these smaller type decor pieces. So here it is, kind of setting. I like to let them set, let me see how I like them. And then I kind of was thinking of adding some waxes and gold maybe to it. But for now, I'm letting it just sit and enjoy this Autumn Cottage decor piece. You can find creative supplies at my website at steelbootsmarket.com. Link will be in the description. Thank you for watching.